Hi there, it's Dee, it's Tips with T, and today we're going to take up another one of the fears I hear all the time. Today we're going to talk a little bit about not using the right word when you're speaking. And I shouldn't say word, I should say right word. See, I've already screwed up. I'm still alive. So the idea behind this is that people that I talk to, women primarily, worry that they will use the wrong word or they won't have access to the word that they want when they want it. So they'll pause, they'll stumble, they'll stutter, they'll have to use a less accurate or less educated word. And that's what it really comes down to, is this idea that you have to have the right word to send the right signals about your intelligence, your education, your overall sort of worthiness to be the one speaking, whether this is in a conversation or whether it's in something more public and more important. Now, I deal with a lot of people women whose first language actually isn't English. Some have learned English when they've moved to either Europe or North America. In some cases, Australia, New Zealand. So they've learned it as adults, or they actually learned it as a child in their school, or they had somebody in their family that spoke English to them. So they actually learned it, but they don't spend a lot of their time maybe talking in it outside of work, or they talk English, they speak English all the time, but they just have never felt confident in it. So that's one group of people, and kind of the backstory around why they feel like they never have the right word. But I want to let you know, those of you that are watching this who maybe don't have English as your first language, this idea of not having the right word is just as prevalent in native English speakers as it is in those that have English as their second, third, fourth language. I know. So if English isn't your first language and you kind of thought, well, this happens because this isn't my first language. Actually, it happens even when it is your first language. And it comes back to the idea of what signals are you sending to people about your background and your worth. So that's the first thing we kind of need to grapple with, is your own sort of your baggage around that. The second thing is, I just generally tell everybody this: don't try to use fancy words if that's not how you speak. Okay, because they don't sound right coming out of your mouth. You look a little bit stunned every time you use them, and they really don't add a lot of value. In fact, when you use big words, fancy words, words that aren't common everyday words, in an effort to look more intelligent or more educated, you actually have the exact opposite effect on your listeners. They flag it as pretentiousness. Now, if you happen to be a person who does use big words because that's just how they are, then go ahead, you do you. Just don't pick words that are going to alienate your audience, or your audience just won't understand. I am guilty of that. I have been guilty of that for a very long time. In fact, people used to make fun of me in school about that, thinking that I was intentionally using words to create an impression about me. I wasn't doing that. I was just using the word I wanted to use for what I wanted to say. But because my capacity with words and my vocabulary, because of my reading, was a lot larger in many ways and in many cases than the people I was around, it seemed like I was trying to be more than I was. So when you're worried about having the right word or not, remember that sword cuts both ways, actually. Here's the last thing I'm going to say to you about the right word right now. The right word or the wrong word often comes out because we've either paused or not paused long enough to actually think about what we wanted to say. So we're talking about situations where you haven't spent the time writing out, say, speaking notes, right? So just a conversation. So we get on this runaway train and these words all come out, and then our mouth can't keep up with our brain, or our brain can't keep up with our mouth. Either one can happen. And these things come out. So let's say the wrong word does come out. Okay, the wrong word comes out. What's wrong with saying, oh, that's not what I meant, or that's the wrong word, or that's not the right word, is it? There's nothing wrong with actually just saying that. It is a far better strategy to be authentic and honest in those moments than it is to kind of get overwhelmed and blustery about it. Because, guys, guess what? You're human. You're going to screw up. It's not if, folks, it's when. And then the question is, what are you going to do? So, when the fears of having the right word or words comes up, take a moment to think about why you care so much about that, and then think about what you can do to make things easier for yourself. And just a hint, um, not talking isn't a solution, and writing everything out or thinking you have to have everything written out before you speak is also not a solution. So those are two things I hear all the time. So no. So that's your tip for today. Subscribe below for more awesomeness from me. Bye.